This is your Rigsby Report for the week of October 2nd, and first off, welcome back. It's been a minute since I've been on the air with this podcast, and honestly, for really good reason. It has been I always try to think of the right adjective to describe this, and wild is what comes to mind, but I don't think that hits high enough notes to describe the last year, but it's been a really wild last year. We added Lucas Oil. We added High Limit. NASCAR Grassroots, which we love our partnership with them, gets added to FloRacing. The madness that is planning and executing Castrol FloRacing Night in America. Just the always changing landscape of streaming short track racing in this country. It's really hard to describe how insane the last 365 days, which is about how long it's been plus since I've done a Rigsby Report, how crazy it has been at FloRacing and Dirt on Dirt. But I do come with some good news. My role at Flow Sports and FloRacing is about to change a little bit. And with that comes me being right here in this seat and being on air a lot more. Kind of going back to the roots of what made Dirt on Dirt what it was and kind of got my face out there starting all the way back in 2007. I'll be doing the Rigsby Reports more. I'll be appearing at more shows. But as far as this podcast goes, we're going to change it up a little bit from how it used to be. This started as a project back in 2021, where I would do in-depth interviews, really long-form interviews, 50, 60, 70 minutes with some of the most recognizable faces in the sport. And I'm pivoting away from that. I'm not saying I'm never going to talk to folks again or never going to interview them on the podcast again. Actually, I think the second or third one, I'm going to have Matt Weaver on, a noted NASCAR reporter, to talk about the dirt asphalt synergies. We'll do some of that, but they won't be in that long form that they were before. They're going to be quicker, faster, definitely me offering more opinions and get some thoughts out there that I've wanted to forever. I'll sprinkle in some of those interviews, like I said, but by and large, this is going to be me riffing about what I think on things and reacting to things that happen in the sport. And I'm going to start today on a couple of those topics. First up, the very, very popular to discuss at the moment Lucas Oil points chase. The Final Four is set. Ricky Thornton Jr., Hudson O'Neal, JD, Jonathan Davenport, for those that don't know, and Devin Moran securing the final spot after that I can't believe this is happening moment happened to Brandon Overton at the Pittsburgher last weekend. So RTJ, Huddy, JD, and Devin Moran are the Final Four. We head into the Dirt Track World Championship at Eldora. Turn this down. See, I'm a rookie. We head into the Dirt Track World Championship at Eldora, and it's pretty simple. Whoever finishes highest of those four drivers will be the 2023 Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series champion. That's it. It's that simple. Four guys, points are even. Only one of those four can win the championship. Whoever finishes highest at Eldora in the DTWC is your 2023 champion. Let's start with the tough part of that. No doubt, right? RTJ has a 530-point lead, and he's had this, a year for the ages. Ranks right up there with that JD 15 year, that year Brandon Shepard had, et cetera, et cetera. And I really think, it makes him the rightful champion this season. And in any other year, he'd have it. All he'd have to do is show up to Eldora. Actually, I don't even think he'd have to show up to Eldora. He's got a 2-race lead. So maybe the car would just need to be in the parking lot, and he would have the championship set. Not only wrapped up, but would likely go down as one of the greatest series champions of all time based on the season he's had. I think he has 19 full field victories, an all-time record on the tour. So people ask me all the time, what's your opinion on that if RTJ doesn't win the championship, right? He's amassed this massive lead. And I say, yeah, that part of this stinks. Ricky does deserve to have his name on the trophy. He deserves to be recognized as a guy who had a historic season and then be crowned for that historic season. If you're looking for me to kind of disagree with that point, I'm not gonna. That part of this does make me sad. It makes me sad for Ricky, for Anthony Burroughs, for the team that they've put together, the historical piece of the sport where you could say, man, this guy was Lucas champion in a year where he had all these wins. However, so I express my sadness, right? However, the people that are calling this a travesty, and a quote that I took and I saw, a great stain on the history of dirt late model racing, those people need to calm down a little bit. I'm actually talking to some of the own writers that work for Dirt on Dirt. I know Robert Holman and Kyle McFadden have been a little too critical of this, in my opinion. You can't say that Flo and DOD are only shilling for the Lucas side. Those guys in Fast Talk were pretty critical, and I disagree with them, candidly. I'm going to offer an opposing view on this. So a couple points I want to make on that. Prior to pivoting to the chase format for the end of the year, series director Rick Schwally called every team owner and every driver that was going to run Lucas Oil and basically said, hey, this is what we're thinking about doing. What do you think? And virtually all of them, the team owners and drivers said, we're in. We're in for this. There were no surprises here. They all knew exactly what they signed up for. And I actually think I've seen some race fans say, well, they caught them off guard with this. No, they knew exactly what they signed up for going into the year. And part of the reason they were all okay with it is because Lucas Oil put their money where their mouth is and went out and raised $500,000, $500,000, and put it in the points fund. The guy who finishes fourth of those guys at the DTWC and will be fourth in points, he gets $100,000 for fourth. Just a few short years ago, the Lucas Oil champion, the guy that won the whole thing, got $75,000. This year, $200,000 to win the championship and $100,000 to win the race. It could be a $300,000 night. Lucas Oil and Rick Schwally and Wayne Castleberry were self-aware enough to say, hey, if we're going to do this, if we're going to take this thing down to the final race and we're going to format it this way, we really have to make it worth it financially. And they did that. They had an idea they knew might catch some people the wrong way, and they backed it up with $500,000. Nobody does that. Nobody puts $500,000 into a points fund in one offseason. I will not accept the travesty and stain on the sport. Bummer. It's a bummer if Ricky doesn't win it. And I'm going to talk about Ricky in a second. But man, you stick $500,000 in there, everybody signs off on it, and you're getting me to kind of do podcasts and everybody talking about it. And what I mean by that is it was interesting enough for me to come on the air and revamp this podcast. That's a good thing. And then that's the last point I wanted to hit on this is an idea in a sport that is so often void of new ideas. People, tracks, promoters, series, media, we're guilty of it. I'll take some blame. We don't come up with new ideas often enough. Lucas Oil said, hey, let's have the audacity to try something different and come up with a new idea. So even if you're listening to this right now, it's going through your ears and into your brain, and you hate it like in the deepest part of your soul, you hate this, at least respect and appreciate in a sport that is void of fresh things. This is fresh. This is different. And I can promise you, the eyeballs on this thing from Pittsburgh last weekend all the way through these 2 off weeks and into the final few, hopefully dramatic laps at Eldora, the interest has been through the roof for this thing. I can already tell you based on viewership, page views, social numbers, people are locked into this chase. It's creating a spark in dirt late model racing that dirt late model racing will only benefit from. So I cuss on this podcast a lot. So rather than shitting on this thing, can we all at least let it play out and see what happens at Eldora? I think even Rick Schwally will tell you, yeah, it's a bummer that Ricky Thornton might not win the title. That's the downside of this. But I think it's very possible the popularity, the attention, the spark, the upside can outweigh the downside. Let's at least wait and see. And one last thing, I said I was going to mention Ricky. Can we stop writing this guy off? I get it. Everyone's just handing Jonathan Davenport the championship. Jonathan Davenport, who, this is a separate podcast, I think might be the 3rd greatest dirt late model driver all time at present. Bloomquist, Moyer, JD. I said it. I think he could be number 3. But Ricky's had one of the greatest seasons in the history of our sport. Fans are acting like he can't do it, can't go to Eldora and win it. I think he is. I actually think Ricky Thornton Jr. is going to win the Dirt Track World Championship and win this championship. I think they're so motivated to do it. I think RTJ does it. Let's just not write the guy off. Everybody's doing that. I'm excited about the DTWC. We have tons of coverage in the next couple weeks. Keep it locked here for all of that. One other note from this past weekend. I obviously, for obvious reasons, I get pigeonholed as a dirt late model guy. I came up at Fairbury Speedway. I created Dirt on Dirt. I spent my life covering dirt late model racing, but I really do, this is no BS, I really do pay attention to a ton of short track racing. I watched Bridgeport last night. I watch a lot of that NASCAR grassroots stuff that we've got, drag racing, midgets, et cetera, et cetera. And speaking of midgets, I've made it known before, really, I think the purest form of motorsports on the planet is what USAC has. Non-wing sprint car and midget racing is the most exciting pound for pound in the purest form of motorsports on the planet. My late model people grabbing their heart hearing me say that right now, but I think it's true. And this past weekend is one of the best events in the country, the BC 39, the race that honors the late Brian Clausen that takes place at the dirt track at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, the track that's been built, and I'm not BSing when I say this, it really is one of the best tracks in the country. That's that 5th mile dirt track in the infield at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Every single time the USAC is on it, it's a banger. I'm talking sliders, side-by-side stuff, wild dramatics in front of huge crowds. The racing and the environment are unreal every time. I had a Twitter exchange with Matt Weaver, who I mentioned, kind of NASCAR and various other motorsports reporter, where I said, hey, I wish they'd made this track a little bigger, because he was talking about how good the race was. If it was just a little bigger, you could put 4 10-wing sprint cars on it. You could put super late models on it. It would just be more multi-purpose and raise the profile. Funny to say about Indianapolis, I get it, but raise the profile of that place even more. Kirk Spridgen from USAC, and I have a pretty good relationship with Spridge. We're not like great friends or anything, but I think there's a mutual respect there. He very promptly responded with, quote, "It's the perfect size for midgets, which is why it was made," end quote. I get it, Spridge. I wasn't trying to offend. The idea was midgets. Midgets put on an awesome show, but one of my favorite sayings in life is both can't both things be true. It's one of my favorite sayings. Cannot both things be true? Midgets are capable of putting on amazing races at tracks that are bigger than a 5th mile. And I'm not saying, God, I wish this thing was a 1/2 mile. I'm just saying if it was barely stretched out a little more, get it to a 1/4 mile, even a small 1/4 mile, we could be talking about a facility that has outlaw sprint cars, Lucas Oil late models, outlaw late models, and be a true show place. As Indianapolis Motor Speedway, I think, deserves even more. Again, people are going to say, well, Rigsby, it's easy for you to say it's not your money. Indianapolis doesn't need any more attention. All of that's probably true. And having the BC39 be incredible, also awesome. Kevin Miller, USAC, Spridge, they do an awesome job. Chris Kearns, our buddy, helped with it this year with that event. But I can't help but watch it and think, I'm jealous. I'd like to go there. I'd love there to be a high limit race there, a Lucas Oil late model dirt series race there, an outlaw sprint car race there, whatever it is. I'd like to see that. And that's kind of impossible, or at least it seems impossible on the current configuration of that racetrack. Awesome for midgets, will be forever. Probably never going to get any bigger, but it'd be kind of cool if it was. We could see some different kinds of racing on that track. Just had that thought this weekend. I feel like I probably successfully offended dirt late model people and USAC and midget people this week. Was not my intention, but that's probably what I did. That's it for the first Rigsby Report back. We will be back sooner and more regular. I hope you guys enjoy kind of this new format. I'll have some guests on next week. I'm going to rank my top 10 dirt late model events in the country. 1 through 10, release it. Definitely going to anger some people with that. Release my top 10 dirt late model events in the country. Please hit me on Twitter at MFR Dirt on Dirt. Let me know your thoughts as well on Indy, on the Chase, and let me know what you think are the top 10 dirt late model events in the country. All right, we'll see you next week.